Hey, welcome back to the campfire. Or if this is your first time, welcome. Grab a drink, get comfy because we are about to dive into something that's been bugging me for a while. You know, sometimes I'll just be scrolling through my old game libraries or even just thinking about some of the amazing experiences I've had over the years. And the thought just hits me like a digital brick. Why are we letting so many good games just die? Just imagine this for a second. What if one day the game we love the most, Minecraft, just stopped working? Not because of a bug or because your PC broke, but simply because you couldn't log in anymore. You try to launch the game and it asks you to sign in to your Microsoft account to prove you bought it, but for some unknown reason you cannot do that. And suddenly, the whole world you spent years building, the memories with friends, the quiet solo nights, the laughter, the creations, it's all just locked behind a verification system that no longer works. And maybe you try to find another way in, a third-party launcher, or the backup you made years ago, but now you are told that doing that is illegal. So the game doesn't belong to you anymore, not really. Just imagine that, the most popular game of all time, buried. Not because people stopped loving it, but because the system said you don't own it anymore. Seriously, think about it. How many times have you heard about a beloved online game shutting down its servers? Or a classic single-player title becoming impossible to play because of some DRM that no longer exists? Or a company going belly up and taking its digital storefront with it? It's like these incredible works of art, these vibrant communities, these whole worlds we've invested hundreds, sometimes thousands of hours into, just vanish into the ether. Poof! Gone! And it's not like they are just fading away quietly. It feels like they're being actively killed off. And for what? Usually, it's not even a good reason. I mean, imagine if books just disappeared from shelves after a few years because the publisher decided it wasn't profitable anymore. Or if your favorite movie was just poof, wiped from existence because the studio wanted to make room for their next big thing. Sounds crazy, right? But that's exactly what's happening in the video game world. And it's a problem we really need to talk about. We need to stop killing games. It's a bold statement, I know, but I genuinely believe it. We are in an era where games are more than just entertainment. They are cultural touchstones. They are historical artifacts. They are places where we connect with friends, form communities, and even express ourselves. And to see them systematically dismantled or made inaccessible, it just feels wrong. It feels like a betrayal to the players who poured their time, money, and passion into them, and frankly, a disservice to the creators who poured their hearts and souls into making them. Tonight, I just wanna take some time to sit with this whole killing games thing. We'll go through the quiet ways these games are disappearing, why it's happening, and why, if we really stop and think about it, it matters more than we often admit. And maybe along the way, we can reflect a little on what we, as players and fans, can actually do about it. Because, let's be honest, if we don't speak up, who will? And how many more of these amazing words do we have to lose before we finally say that's enough? So take a breath, settle in. This won't be loud, but it might get a little personal. I've got some stories, some thoughts, and yeah, maybe a little frustration simmering underneath. Let's talk. Alright, so let's break down how this game killing actually happens. Because it's not just one big dramatic server shutdown, although that's certainly a big part of it, it's a multifaceted problem. Like a slow erosion of our gaming history. First up, and probably the most obvious and heartbreaking, is the server shutdown for online games. This is the one that really stings. especially for those of us who spend countless hours in an MMO, or a competitive online shooter, or even just a fun co-op experience. One day, you are logging in, chatting with your guild, raiding with your friends, and the next, you get an email saying, effective date, the servers for game name will be permanently shut down. And that's it. All those memories, all those connections, all that in-game progress just vanishes. Think about games like City of Heroes. Man, what a loss. That game had such a passionate community, so much heart, and then poof, gone. Despite protests, despite the pleas of thousands of players, NCSoft pulled the plug. Or Mech, massive action game on PS3. A game that pushed the boundaries of massive online battles. A game far ahead of its time. Once the servers were gone, the game was literally unplayable. It's not like you can just fire up a local version. The core experience was online, and when that lifeline was cut, the game ceased to exist. And it's not just the big ones. There are countless smaller, niche online games that suffer the same fate. Remember games like Battlefield Heroes or Paragon? Or even once addictive mobile game that just disappear from the App Store and stops working because the developers move on? They might not have had millions of players, but they had dedicated, loving communities. Their stories, their unique mechanics, their entire existence just wiped away because it wasn't generating enough revenue for a publisher. It's a purely financial decision, often with little to no consideration for the cultural impact or the player investment. Next up, and perhaps more insidious because it happens quietly, is the delisting and removal from digital storefronts. This is where games simply disappear from places like Steam, PlayStation Store, Xbox Marketplace, or the eShop. Sometimes it's due to licensing issues. Music license expire, character licenses run out, or an IP owner decides they don't want the game associated with their brand anymore. Other times, it's a publisher going out of business, or just deciding a game isn't worth selling anymore. Remember the Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game? For years, it was completely unavailable digitally because of licensing issues. It was a cult classic, highly sought after, and yet, if you didn't own it digitally already, you were out of luck. Thankfully, it made a comeback, but that's a rare success story. Many games just disappear forever. This is a huge problem for game preservation. If a game isn't available to purchase, how are new generations of players supposed to discover it? How are we supposed to study game design history if key titles are locked away behind a digital iron curtain? It's like libraries deciding to just throw out books they deem unpopular or too old. It's an act of cultural vandalism, really. Then there is the less direct but equally damaging form of killing games. DRM or digital rights management becoming defunct, or simply losing compatibility with modern hardware and operating systems. This mostly affects older PC games, but it's a big one. You might own a physical copy of a game, but if it relies on an online activation server that's been shut down, or a specific DRM sims that no longer support it, you are stuck. You literally cannot play the game you legitimately bought. Think about games that use Games for Windows Live. When Microsoft phased that out, many games were left in a limbo state. Some developers patched them to remove the GFWL requirement, but many didn't. So you have this, you have a key, but the gateway to actually playing the game is gone. It's a constant battle for PC gamers, always wrestling with old operating system drivers and obscure patches just to get a beloved classic running. And if you are not tech savvy, or if there is no community patch available, that game is effectively dead to you. And let's not forget how rapidly technology evolves. Older console games often require specific hardware that's no longer manufactured, or even just working controllers. While emulation helps, it's not always perfect, and it relies on the hard work of dedicated individuals, not official support. If a company isn't providing a path forward, like backwards compatibility or remasters, those games become increasingly difficult to access and play. It's a slow, agonizing death by obsolescence. Another worrying trend, and one that inherently carries the seeds of its own destruction, is the live service model, GAAS, Game as a Service. These games are designed to be constantly updated, constantly evolving, with new content cycles and seasonal passes. While they can be incredibly engaging in their prime, their entire existence is predicated on continuous developer support and player engagement. The moment the revenue stream dips, or the developer decides to shift resources, these games become incredibly vulnerable. We've seen so many live service games launch with a bang, only to fizzle out and have their servers shut down within a few years. Anthem, Babylon's Fall, Marvel's Avengers. These are just a few recent examples of games that had massive budgets and expectations, but ultimately couldn't sustain themselves. When they go, they often take their unique gameplay loops, their evolving narratives, and their communities with them. There is no offline mode to fall back on. The game literally ceases to be. This GAAS model fundamentally changed our relationship with game ownership. When you buy a traditional single-player game, you generally feel like you own it. With live service, you're not really buying the game itself. You are paying for access to a continually evolving service. It's like building a beautiful, intricate sand castle, but knowing that the tide is constantly coming in, and eventually it's all going to wash away. It's a fundamentally fragile model for game creation, and it leaves players feeling incredibly vulnerable, knowing that their investment of time and money could be pulled out from under them at any moment. So why does this all happen? At its core, it almost always boils down to money and liability. First, cost of maintenance. Running game servers isn't free. There are electricity costs, bandwidth costs, hardware costs, and the cost of human resources to maintain and update the servers, deal with cheaters, and provide customer support. If a game isn't generating enough revenue through subscription, microtransaction, or new sales, companies will eventually deem it an unprofitable endeavor. It's a business decision, plain and simple. The second is licensing expiration. As mentioned, licenses for music, intellectual property, or even middleware like game engines or specific tools expire. Renewing these licenses can be incredibly expensive, sometimes more than the continued revenue a game generates. Rather than pay up, publishers often just pull the game from sale. It's a shame because sometimes just a few pieces of licensed content can doom an entire game. The third, technical debt and obsolescence. Keeping older games running on modern systems or even just maintaining older code bases can be a nightmare. Developers move on, documentation gets lost, and the original tools might no longer be available. Porting or updating an old game can be a massive undertaking, and again, if the projected sales don't justify the investment, it just won't happen. Fourth, company acquisitions and closures. When game studios or publishers are acquired or simply go out of business, their existing catalog can be left in limbo. The new owner might not see value in maintaining older titles, or they might simply not have the legal rights or technical know-how to keep them alive. We've seen this happen countless times, where a beloved developer gets bought out and their legacy titles slowly disappear. And the last one, focus on new products. Let's be real, the gaming industry is always looking forward. Publishers want to sell the next big thing. Maintaining an old game, especially one that's not a cash cow, takes resources away from developing and marketing new titles. There is a constant pressure to innovate and release, and sometimes older games are just seen as baggage. Okay, so we've covered the how and the why, but let's dig into the why it matters. Because it's not just about losing a few hours of entertainment, it's much, much deeper than that. Video games are a legitimate art form. They tell stories, they explore complex themes, they push technological boundaries, and they reflect the societies in which they were created. When games disappear, we lose a piece of our cultural history. Future generations won't be able to experience these works, study their design, or understand their impact. Imagine if we just started burning old films or destroying classic paintings because they were not profitable anymore. It's unthinkable, but it's happening in gaming. When we buy a game, especially an online one, we are making an investment, not just of money, but of our time, our emotions, and our community building. When a game is shut down, that investment feels betrayed. It makes players hesitant to invest in future online games, wondering if their next favorite title will also be put out from under them. It creates a sense of impermanence in a hobby that we want to be enduring. Game preservation is already a massive challenge. Digital-only releases, online-only components, and rapidly changing technology make it incredibly difficult for museums, archives, and academic institutions to preserve games for future study. When companies actively kill games, they make this already Herculean task even harder, if not impossible. We lose the ability to learn from past successes and failures, to understand the evolution of game design, and to document this rapidly evolving medium. For many developers, games are their life's work. They pour years of their lives into creating these experiences. To see their creation vanish, to know that their artistic legacy is being systematically erased, must be soul-crushing. It devalues the immense effort and creativity that goes into game development when the shelf life of a game is treated as so disposable. There is a growing trend towards cloud gaming and streaming services. While convenient, they exacerbate this problem. You don't own the game, you're just renting access to it. If the service shuts down or the game is removed from the catalog, you lose access instantly. It's the ultimate form of not truly owning your digital content, and it puts us entirely at the mercy of corporations. So this isn't just about nostalgia, though that's certainly a part of it. This is about the very nature of digital ownership, cultural preservation, and the respect we give to both creators and consumers in the gaming world. It's a systemic issue that needs systemic solutions, and it starts with us recognizing the problem and advocating for change. Alright, so we've talked about how games are dying and why it matters. It's a pretty bleak picture, I know. But here's the thing, we as players aren't completely powerless. We have a voice and we have a buying power. We can push for change and we can support the people and organizations who are already fighting for game preservations. This is probably the biggest lever we have. We need to tell publishers and developers loud and clear that we value game preservation and accessibility. Okay, so let's break this into some points. First, demand offline modes for online games. If a game has a significant single-player component, or even if it's heavily co-op, push for an offline mode or a peer-to-peer options that can exist if official servers go down. Even if it's just a limited version, it's better than nothing. Second, insist on DRM-free options or shutdown DRM removal. When a game relies on DRM that requires an external server, companies should be obligated to release a DRM-free version or a patch that removes the DRM when those servers are shut down. GOG.com has built their entire business model on this, proving it's possible. The third, support backwards compatibility and remasters done right. Companies like Microsoft and Sony have made strides with backwards compatibility, which is huge for preservations. But we also need to encourage them to keep doing it, and for developers to offer thoughtful remasters that preserve the original experience while making it accessible on modern platforms. Not every remaster needs to be a complete overhaul. Sometimes just an updated port is enough. Fourth, voice your concern respectfully. Use social media, forums, and customer support channels to express your disappointment when a game is delisted or shut down. Organized campaigns like the one that helped bring Scott Pilgrim back can actually work. Just remember to be constructive and respectful in your feedback. Harassment never helps. There are dedicated people and organizations out there fighting the good fight. Let's lift them up. Support digital preservation groups. Organizations like the Video Game History Foundation, the Internet Archive, and local game museums are doing incredible work to archive games, source code, and historical context. Donate if you can, spread awareness about their work, or volunteer your time if you have relevant skills. Support emulation and fan projects with caveats. While legally gray sometimes, emulation and fan-made servers or patches are often the only reason many classic games are still playable. Understand their importance in the preservation landscape, but always remember to support official release when they exist. It's a complex area, but often these are the last bastions for dying games. Buy physical when possible. While not a foolproof solution, owning a physical copy of a game often provides a more direct form of ownership and a better chance of playing it in the distant future. Especially for single-player titles, it reduces reliance on digital storefronts that can disappear. A little personal responsibility goes a long way. Think before you invest heavily in pure live service games. If a game is 100% reliant on active servers and offers no offline component, be aware of the inherent risk. Enjoy them for what they are, but perhaps temper your expectation about their longevity. Demand transparency and accountability from platforms. Major digital storefronts like Steam, PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo have a huge role to play. They should be transparent about their policies regarding delisted games and ideally advocate for publishers to make games accessible after delisting. Are there consumer rights or regulatory discussion emerging that could hold these platforms more accountable for content they sell even if publishers pull the plug? This is an area where we as consumers need to ask more questions. Back up what you can legally. For PC games, if you have a legal right to, consider backing up game installer and patches. For console games, explore legal options for backing up your own game data if the platform allows. Spread the word. Talk about game preservation with your friends. Share this video, share articles, raise awareness about the issue. The more people who understand the problem, the stronger our collective voice becomes. This isn't about stopping progress or demanding that every single game ever made stays online forever, come hell or high water. That's simply not realistic. But it is about finding a balance. It's about recognizing the cultural value of video games beyond their immediate revenue generation. It's about respecting the players who invest their time and money, and the creators who pour their lives into these experiences. We need to push for a future where games are not treated as disposable consumer products, but as legitimate forms of art and cultural artifacts that deserve to be preserved and accessible for generations to come. When we say stop killing games, We are not just saying, keep my favorite game alive. We are advocating for a fundamental shift in how the industry views its own creations and its relationships with its audience. So, what about you? Have you ever lost a game you really loved? Maybe to a shutdown, or just one day it was gone? What's the one memory you wish you could revisit but can't anymore? If you feel like sharing, I'd love to read your story in the comments. And if this is something that's been sitting in your chest too, then maybe keep the conversation going, because the more we talk about this, the harder it will be for the industry to just ignore it. Thanks for being here tonight. Take care out there, and I'll see you by the fire again soon.